So I've got
I
some of
got
this
you.
spalted elm. Um, and so I wanted to talk real quick about I don't, as far as I know, there's not a name for this technique. Book matching is where you take a piece of wood and you slice it down the middle on your bandsaw. When you lay it open, it's like the pages of a book, and that's book matching. So I think what I would call this is end matching. What I did was took the piece of wood and I had milled it down and I just cut it in half so that the ends meet. And then when you turn them face to face, you get a really neat continuation. Mostly, it's not perfect, but you get a really neat map of the spalting from the sides. So I don't know if I'm keeping a new term or if that term actually exists, but I'm going to call this end matching. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my handy dandy Duxbury center finder, which makes it really easy to get almost perfect centers um, inadvertently. Like I didn't line that up or anything. It's just right there. And
JJ,
we're
you
going
weren't at SWAT. How'd you get one of those?
to, it's a secret. It's a secret. I visited the Duxbury's. That's how. And Jim said, "Are you going to SWAT?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Well, here, take this." Oh, but it's a handy dandy little tool. I'll tell you. I use it more than I use my actual turning center finder because you can use it on anything. Find center, and we're just going to do glue block, waste block to hold these because it's only a little more than an inch thick, and they're not even. You can see I cut this on a bandsaw and the blade wandered, so it's not even. It doesn't have to be as long as you remember where your grains match. And the way I've set it up is so that those are the center. Bring up tailstock, little thick CA, maybe. We might have to use medium. Okay. Almost out. It's time to call Starbond. Almost out of thick CA. Little accelerator over here. And you find the center. And that lets you line that piece up pretty darn good. And that's a very, very fast, very easy way to find center on an odd piece so that you can get it in to a glue block and turn it. This is going to be a fairly small box. I would say this is a ring box. We're going to use the standard procedure. We're going to turn the top first. So this is the lid. You can see it's uneven. We'll fix that in just a minute. All right, our glue is set. Face shield on. And honestly, for most of this box, this is cross grain. Grain is running in this direction. Most of this box, I'm going to use my bowl gouge. But I'm going to lower the tool rest. I've been spindle turning, so the tool rest is high. I'm not using the skew today. Not quite round. Okay, we're close enough to round. Take a look and get a little bit of that natural edge. We might try to keep some of that because it's kind of cool with the bug tracks and stuff in it. Plus, it'll help us match up the grain when we put our box together. Take our tailstock out. And flatten it. I've been doing too much spindle turning. Now, for a while, I've been turning boxes backwards or upside down. I've been putting the tenon on the lid and the recess on the base. And I realized that it had created an issue where my lids are too heavy, because in order to have that tenon on there, you've got to step in a ways, and that just leads, when you make a natural curve, you don't want to undercut the tenon and weaken it. It makes your lid heavy. So I've reversed course on that design, and I'm now putting my recess on the lid. I think we can go a little bit thinner. Now, in order to keep that little bit of natural edge, we're going to have a thicker wall here. Sometimes I think it's okay to make that sacrifice for the sake of keeping something like this little feature here. I kind of like that. I think that's kind of cool. So we're going to keep it. And we are cross grain, so we will stick with the bowl gouge. And yes, this is a 5/8 inch bowl gouge, but the more I use it, I find the finer I'm able to get with it. It's just become my, yes.
Any chance you can move to light? It's washing everything out. Yeah, let's go with that angle.
Is that better?
Yeah.
On my overhead camera, my manual camera, I can open and close the iris. I can't do that on this automatic focus camera. I'm not going to go all the way out to my wall or to my line, because I have to come in with a parting tool and make the sides of that recess straight. We're going to stop real quick and check our depth. Oh, we can go about another 3/8 of an inch. I am going to switch to a 1/2 inch. I'm going to throw it on the floor, a 1/2 inch scraper. I have a padded floor, so I didn't mess the tip up. And here I do need to raise the rest a little bit. Been watching a lot of Tomislav Tomasic and Richard Raffin. And enjoying some of their scraper technique. All right, I got to aim the light in there for a second, sorry. Okay, good. Okay, now we're ready to put our recess in. And at this point, because we don't have the tenon formed yet, we really have a lot of control over what we do as far as the depth of the recess and width of the walls. This at this stage, we really have complete control of how that's going to end up shaping out. So what I do is I line up the shaft of the tool with the bedway of the lathe. That ensures that I come in straight so that the sides of my recess are parallel. And I have a perfect, I'm sorry?
You got smoke coming off of there.
No, this is really, really dry. That is powder dust. There's no heat in here. It is just very dry. This elm was standing spalted, and it really, really is dry. I could take a tiny bit more out of here. Just a hair. Again, lining that up, make sure I have very, very straight sides. Yeah, it does look like smoke. That is just super fine powdery dust. Now, something to notice, depending, the smaller the size of your circle, the more effect this has. You can have the angle of your parting tool start to kick your tool out of line. So be aware that it wants to naturally start to, because of the angle, it wants to start to move in like that, and counter that with your cut. It's just something to be conscious of it. Make sure that you're getting a straight cut as possible. And I think it's Sam Angelo has a technique to proof whether or not this is a straight side on his recesses, but I can't remember. I'll have to look that up and see if I can find it again in one of his videos. I cannot remember quite how he did it. All right, I want to clean this up in the inside a tiny bit more. For that, I'm going to go to my 3/8-inch spindle gouge with the Mark Soleil signature grind. Much better. And then I'm going to scrape across the bottom one more time with that 1/2-inch scraper. We're not going to sand tonight, but as soon as you're happy with the shape of the inside of the lid of your box, at this stage, you want to sand it to completion, all the way to, depending on what you're using for finish, all the way up to finish. Because once you take this off of the lathe, however you're holding it, once I separate it from the waste block, I'm never going to be able to hold it straight again to get to the inside. You can, but it's really it's a lot of work to find a way to jam it and hold it in order to do it. So be sure that this is exactly what you want, what the inside of your boxes looks like, the shape. Make sure that it's the way you want it, because once you get it off of however you're holding it, it's very, very, very difficult to get it back onto the lathe. But that's the inside of that turn. We're going to part this off once we get this mounted on the other side. So we will bring up another little waste block. If you don't have a bucket of waste blocks, talk to Captain Eddie. He'll explain it.
Yeah,
He's where I learned it.
yeah.
I
Got a
have a
bucket
five.
of 10 in stock.
I'm working on my
Buckets.
second 5-gallon bucket of waste blocks. So you can see I've already used this one. It's a mess. So first thing we'll do is clean it up real quick. A trick with these waste blocks is find a known flat surface. You can use the shaft of your tool. I've got a diamond card right here, but you can see whether or not that's flat so that you can glue to it immediately with a known flat surface. That's good and flat. I do want to clean this just a hair. We'll just do a light scrape. A little bit of glue right there. Clean that off. And we're going to do the exact same procedure we did with the other half and a little C8 glue. Bring up your tailstock. We already established center on the other piece of our block. Now remember, I established center here, so that's center to center, which is how we get our matchup of our spalt. I recommend you use thick for this because you got to turn it vertical. And unless you're very, very quick, medium will run, and thin, good luck. Okay. Give that a second. While that is setting up, we are going to take our vernier caliper and measure the outside diameter here. So we have a little bit of flat. That'll all get fixed when we turn it the second time on the outside. So we're going to get a diameter here. Make sure at our narrowest point, yep, we're going to have a little bit of flat there. That's fine. Let's see if that's set. Okay, glue is set. First thing we're going to do this time is flatten this surface so that we can set our outside diameter. So we have to trust that CA glue immediately. Thankfully, it sets pretty quickly. Back to bowl gouge.
Can we minimize the light again, JJ?
Sorry. Is that better?
No, no, that's good. Perfect.
I'm working on getting a better camera for that angle. Actually, might be a better angle to look straight down and see what's going on anyway.
We all struggle with the lights when we're demoing.
All right, let's check our flatness. Again, I really like to use my little diamond cards. It just works really well. I have a slight concavity. Pretty good. Pretty good. Good enough to establish our circle. Slow the lathe down. Raise your tool rest so that the center of your caliper is at the level of the center. You only want to touch this side remembering that we have a little bit of a gap because of that natural edge. We have just a hair under. Yeah, I think that'll be okay. So that's just giving a rough that's just giving a rough estimate. Let me color that in. Just getting a rough estimate of circumference so that I don't turn it too thin immediately, because I have to put a tenon on here. So I'm going to come in some more, but I want to make sure that my outside edge is as close to the same size of as the outside edge of the other part. All right, we're just outside our pencil line, and that is more than adequate to get the next step done. And we, on this, that piece of wood was narrowing, so we did lose our natural edge there. That's a little tiny bit of it right there. So that being said, we will fix the outside shape of the lid of the bowl in a minute after we establish our tenon. We're going to take one more pass across the top here. And then we're going to work on our tenon. So again, with the horrible camera, let's see if I can improve that angle just a hair. There we go. And we want to take our vernier caliper again, measure the inside diameter of our recess. Again, we have a nice flat surface. We'll slowly lay it down. Touch the edge closest to you, to the wood. If you touch that side, it'll pick that tool up and kick it right at you. You get a nice little, okay, give me a second and then I will color it in so that you guys can see it. I've got a nice line here. That makes it a little bit more visible. And this is going to be the outside of our tenon. Now, I was watching Richard Finley turn a box, and he made mention of a trick that Jimmy Clues teaches. And I've been using it, and it is incredibly effective. And I don't know why I never thought of it before. But what it is when you make your tenon, rather than making your sides perfectly straight, you make it just a tiny bit bowed. So you have a low end on the inside, a high in the middle, and a low on the bottom. What this does is gives you still get your wood turners pop, you get a good jam, but it enables you to make a lid that is easier to get on and off while still having that same strength as the jam. You still get your pop, and you'll see. I'm going to do it. It really is a neat trick. It's pretty effective. One thing that I would like to caution is don't hollow before you have your tenon established. And the reason for that is because this is going to cause a lot of compression, and we want to make sure that there's plenty of strength in the wood behind that tenon, backing that up so that when we do our jam and we get that compression, we're not crushing that tenon and breaking it. Probably side grain is a little bit better than end grain for that, but you can actually just crumble a tenon on end grain if it's too strong pretty easily. So we're going to go back to the parting tool, and I've got that line there.
Hey, JJ, about what speed you turning at?
So this is less than 3 inches in diameter. So I'm running around 1200, 1300 RPM because it's so thin. I wouldn't, if this was a 6-inch wide box, I'd be running around 900 RPM.
Right on. Thank you.
This is cross grain, so I'm really not doing a peeling cut. It's a scrape. But on the end grain, it works like a peeling cut. So for 2 quick quarters, one on each side, it's a peeling cut, but otherwise it's a scrape. And I took the depth here. I just want to make sure that I'm reflecting that depth there. I can go a little tiny bit deeper. I also stopped way short of my line here. So I don't know if you can see, but I've got about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit more to my line. At this point, I'm going to start making my rounded over tenon. So I'm kind of using a skew technique and a scraping technique at the same time. And I'm going to take it down just outside that line. Now let's see if
You're making a bead, and that is called
yes.
a beading parting tool for a reason.
True. Yeah. I'm making a bead. Essentially, it's a very, very shallow bead. I'm not sure if you can quite visualize it. Let me see if I have a white piece of paper. Yes, I do. Plans for the workbench I made today. Can you see here? We have just the point, or the round, the high point of our bead,
Crown.
And then it comes back down here, and it comes back down in here. Now, one thing
Crown.
we're going to do, crown. Thank you, crown.
You're welcome.
So right about there is the crown of our bead. Now, it's a little bit this side. I'm going to leave it that way, and I'll show you why. Coming in with a 1/4 inch mini skew in the scraping position, I am going to make a little tiny V-shaped notch right down there at the bottom. This especially helps opening when you have a jam fit on the lid. That lets a little bit of air get in there, and that'll help let that lid come off and make it just a little bit smoother. So I know this is oversized. It is barely oversized. So I know that I need to work down a little bit more. And once I can get the front edge of that, now remember, the sides of my recess are straight. Once I can get that front edge in, I can make a friction burn and see, I can take that crown down to that friction burn, and that will give me an almost perfect jam just about every time. I have a lot less failures doing it this way. So again, yep, we're beading. And you can get that tip in there and keep that little V groove at the bottom. All right, we're going to try it again. I've also found doing it this way, there's less trial and error rather than trying to fit it 12 or 14 times. Of course, it's a demonstration, so I'm going to end up fitting it 12 or 14 times. Usually it's 5 or 6 times. All right, so we're still too proud.
Hey JJ, out of consistencies for demos for all of us that have done fitted box lids, you need to spend at least 5 minutes trying to get this fit.
Okay, I'm on it.
Don't try to one up us now.
I'm trying to teach you a technique that makes it quicker.
There you go.
Because it really does.
Yep. Yeah, we all do fine too when the camera ain't showing and there's 85 people watching.
Yep. You hit it like the third try and you're like, oh, I never do that. And you never do again. All right, we're much closer. Much closer. We're still too big intentionally. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if you can see this or not. So I still have the thickness of my pen. I still have the thickness of my pencil. That's not the line. I have the thickness of my pencil lead here still. That's what I'm turning away. Get that fuzz out of there. That'll help. And again, to keep that little V groove, just stand that edge of that front edge of that beading and parting tool up. Really using it primarily as a negative rake scraper at that point. Okay, now we're getting to where we can start to pare that down. I get a tiny bit of a friction groove there, friction burn right on the edge. We could be pretty close. Another trick to fitting your lid is start trying to line up your features. I don't know if you've noticed that I've been doing that, but if you can line up your features while you fit that lid, you have a much better fit, especially cross grain, because the grain again is running this way and the grain is going to move because it's the same piece of wood from end to end. It's the same piece of the wood. The grain's going to move almost uniformly. So even though we're turning it and we're working it, if it decides to move, it's going to stretch in cross grain, long length direction, and it's going to move about the same amount. So just something to remember. If you match your grain on that box, you should when it moves, because wood moves, you should be able to keep it fairly consistent. Okay, we are at this point just making little revisions, little refinations. The crown is too crowny. We're going to ease that crown a little bit and we should have a nice jam. I don't know if you can see the compression. Let's see if we can show you that compression. Yes. See that ridge of compression right there? So I
Yes.
know that that's going to be that's where the crown of my bead is going to impact and create the jam. Get you focused again. There we go. So if I just turn down to that, I should have a pretty nice jam. Alrighty. Take it a little tiny bit more. And again, trying to keep that V down at the bottom so that air can get in there when we're opening it, and air can escape when we close it. There she is. Just a skosh too tight. I don't know if you can notice this or not, but we have a high point and it's rocking and it's on the end on the axis of the side grain. The wood is moving, but it's moving in the same direction from the top piece to the bottom piece. There we go. Not bad. All right. Now, even though we had a little bit of a gap, our spalting is doing some similar, almost mirror-like things. You can see we lost, because we lost some with the tenon, we lost some width here. But if you open the tenon up, you can see that pattern is consistent. So we're close. Not really much way to make it closer in this case, but that's pretty good. Here, it's just the same way that you turn a box any other time. We're going to match up the widths of the outside here and shape it a little. I've got plenty of thickness here, so we can shape it a little bit. See if we can't kind of blend to our natural edge here and keep some of that natural edge. So let's see what we can do with it. Let's take a look. Too much of a step. a little bit smoother. We're going to kind of make a bit of a V cut here. Now this is spindle. That's end grain. Little piece of sapele I didn't even know I had. Ooh. Closer, closer.
Your witness line is going to disappear on you. Looking good.
Yeah, I think I like that. I think
Yeah.
with sanding, that will just blend and we'll have this neat little spot right here of bug
Like a skull.
trail. Yeah.
Hold on. It
I
looks
like
like an
little,
old M7. Looks like an old monkey mask.
so you can see we lost a little bit of our spalt pattern, but it still kind of trails together pretty well. And that's really kind of the trick, the thing that I wanted to show is how to make that effect happen. From here, this being the lid of the box, we would come around here. Well, let's go ahead and do it. We'll part that off and get some shape to it. Yep, perfect. Now, this is a really tight jam. We need to be cognizant of that. We will loosen it up a little bit, but especially if we were going to use this as a ring box or market it as a ring box, we want to make sure that it still has a decent friction fit. So we have to be careful how we shape the lid of the box because the customer needs to be able to open it. So at this point, what I usually like to do is put some kind of a flare in this section so that you can get your fingers into it and open the box. So we'll do that.
Again, what size gouge you using there,
That's a
JJ?
5/8. That is a 5/8 inch bowl gouge. That's a Thompson 5/8 inch bowl gouge, British half inch.
So you're showing, even with big tools, you can make dainty items. Very good.
Absolutely. It's all about tool control. The size of the tool can make a difference, but the way you use it is all the difference in the world. Now, I'm going to give this a little bit of shape. Try to mirror the shape of the inside and the outside of the lid here. I have found with this bowl gouge that the more I use it, the more explicitly dainty I am able to be with it. There are things that just because the tool shaft is so big, you just can't do it. But you most certainly can make very delicate cuts with a big tool. And I find that the weight, because this is such a big tool shaft, and big, I mean, this is a big tool. I find that the weight gives me a lot more stability and I can make much more steady cuts. Just simply because I'm not trying to make sure that the tool isn't bouncing. It weighs enough that it handles those kind of forces on its own pretty well. Let's see. I hate to blind you guys. I'm sorry. I can't quite see this. I want to have a nice, crisp transition right here. Beautiful. Beautiful. Not bad. So I'm kind of mirroring the inside. I've got a little bit of a ring of a rim, something that your fingers can get a hold of. Now, can we open it? That was a pretty good jam. Okay, we're going to teach you how to cheat. If you get in a position like this where your jam's too good, you have not lost your piece. You do lose a little bit of freedom as far as your design is concerned. What we'll do is create a V with this point tool right at the crack here, and that's going to give us.
Flip your camera.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
What we're going to do is create a V with this point tool right at the separation. And before we take that apart, using the little purchase we just created, we're going to decorate. So you'll have to give me a moment to find a sliver of wood. I'm not a big fan of wire burning. Having worked with rotary equipment on naval vessels, loose wire and spinning machinery is terrifying. But this is a technique I learned from a young lady who makes makeup handles. And just take a wood chip and it can't wrap around the piece. And if for some reason you have some kind of a catch or something, it just drops straight down. So your fingers can't get cut off. And not bad. We'll get a little bit more in here. There we go. So you can do your friction burn with a wedge, this little cutoff from my table saw, or a splinter. If you split wood, you have plenty of those, and you can get your friction burn and your fingers are not at risk. So we have a little bit of a crease here. Now we are going to abuse a 1-inch skew chisel for a second. Or you could use that bench chisel if you don't want to abuse your skew chisel. There we go. Now you'll notice once I got it to move off that, it popped. So I know that all I have to do is just a tiny bit of adjustment and I'll have a good friction fit lid. Once I got that to move, it went right off. So we just have to take the crown down just a hair and we should still have a decent friction fit.
JJ, are you going to do that with sandpaper or with a tool?
I'm going to use a tool. And here's why. I never sand my tenon. I do hit it with my sanding paste, but I never sand my tenon. If you're going to have a friction fit, you need to have friction. So if you make your tenon super smooth, you lose your friction no matter what. So I try not to sand this very well. That's just something I've developed, is not sanding the tenon.
I do the same thing, JJ.
I've never had a customer complain, because if I hit it with the sanding paste, it looks like it's sanded.
Right.
Okay, still just a skosh too tight. I'm gonna have to abuse that skew chisel again. We just need to take the hip of that.
Well, I like that you're giving that tenon a little bit more extra attention, JJ.
I'm just doing it for you guys, so you don't feel bad.
Okay. We appreciate it, buddy. We appreciate
it.
No,
Look at that.
JJ, you know what?
Yes, sir.
This is fantastic. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Believe me, I am paying attention.
Okay, we lost a little flake of wood. That's how tight that tenon was. I'm going to I've got it, so we're going to CA glue that back in real quick. Let's hit it with the thin, just so that we can maintain that consistent wall there. Now, thin wicks. You put a few drops, and that actually capillary action sucking that down right in there. I'm going to show you another trick. I just glued my finger. Oh no, what am I going to do? Cool thing about CA glue, twists right off. If you pull, you'll rip your skin. If you twist, you're fine. So we just fixed that little mistake. And we're just going to ease this, the crown here. That's our problem. That's our crux, is right as that pops closed, it's too tight. So we've just got to back that off just a hair more. That may do it. And here, if you can twist it, twisting it'll ease that. No, I think we're going to scrape it just a hair more. Ooh, it just wants to make a liar out of me tonight. And we took that flake right back off. That might have been where our catch was. Yeah, that flake, that raised area where that wood flaked off was where the catch was. Coming right off now. Oh, that's unfortunate. And the reason why, this is spalted wood, and that's punky. And that just was just soft enough that just ripped right up. So we'll hollow the box out, finish the shape, finish the inside real quick. But that one's going to be a failure. And that's okay. It happens. The cool thing about when things like that happen, when you're working with wood, is it gives you an opportunity to remember that it's easy to replace because wood grows on trees.
Indeed. Or in ditches.
Yeah. on the side of the road. And I have to go pick it up, but neighbor across the street had a black locust blow down, and he saved me some branches. The body of the tree was too rotten. The trunk was pretty rotten, but the branches were pretty good shape. So I will be doing some black locust
You
boxes.
you could glue a collar in of contrasting wood
I
and
could,
use
yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. So there are several ways that I can salvage this. Certainly, a collar is or an insert of some kind is one. I think I have a closet spud. I could actually put a brass ring in there. There's so many different ways to fix that. That would take a little while. not demonstration ways to fix that, unfortunately.
And it's easier, just go grab another couple squares and make another one.
But there are definitely plenty of ways to fix that. Paying attention to my cuts would be a good way to help prevent that too. All right, I think we're just about to depth. And we have a shorter ways to go depth-wise here because we lost some height with the tenon. So we will check it. We still have plenty of room. Take at least a quarter of an inch out of there. So remember, this is cross grain, so we're cutting it just like a bowl. If this was end grain, I would be working from the inside out. But being as this is cross grain, I'm using the exact same technique as I would turning a bowl. I'm just doing it smaller. And that forces me to practice better tool control. So this is always a great exercise in just learning to use your tools more carefully. All right, we are pretty good. We're going to flatten that little edge off where I got that catch. We'll just use this as a shear scrape orientation here. Just flatten that down. There we go. So here again, we would sand. I think I am going to scrape because I want to adjust the shape of the bottom corner inside here a little bit. I'm going to use a negative rake bowl scraper that I made by, where did I put it? Repurposing a cheap Savannah scraper and reshaping it. Maybe. A recommendation that I make is if you want to play with the shapes of tools and especially scrapers, don't use your expensive tools. Don't use your Sorby scrapers and mess with the shapes. Buy Savannah. They're cheap. They're like $13 for a scraper. So it's no big deal to reshape it as many times as you want. Why am I missing that scraper? That's weird. Okay, we'll use the other one. But the Savannah ones are inexpensive. It's not very good high-speed steel. It is fairly soft for high-speed steel, which also makes it easier for you to reshape it. But it's inexpensive, so you're not losing a lot of money. Now, this is another box scraper I made where I made a sharper angle and kicked this edge in a little bit so that I'm not dragging the whole shaft of the tool down the side of the box. This is also negative rake. I have to figure out where I put that Savannah. Well, this leaves a sharp corner in the bottom of the box. Some people prefer sharp corners, some people do not. It's all up to you. It's your artwork. Not bad. Pretty clean in there. All right, we're going to very quickly show you when you're doing a small box like this. Essentially, what you have when you put the lid on and turn the lid is you have a jam chuck, right? This is a jam chuck. So why not finish the bottom of the box with a jam chuck too, which we're going to do, hopefully. Now I'm going to spend half the night worrying about where I put that darn scraper, because it's not in the usual places. What would I have done with that scraper? It's got a, what I did is it's an asymmetric scraper. If you watch Richard Raffin, it's shaped a lot like his asymmetric inside corner bowl scraper, except it's got a negative. Mine has a negative rake. His does not. So if you're familiar with his asymmetric scraper, that's the scraper I use. And I just mimicked his. All right. So in my bowl O cutoffs, I am looking for something that will make a suitable jam. And I have a big chunky cutoff, but it'll work really well for a recessed jam. So this is, again, this is just a piece of end grain. This is the end of one of the vases I made. Now I could jam this inside or outside. I could make a spigot that fits down in here, but I have slopes sides, so that probably wouldn't jam very well. So we'll do a recess. So we'll do the exact same way we fit the lid in reverse. We'll take our diameter, slow the lathe down, touch the tip closest to us. Look at that, dead on. You can't see it because that camera's garbage. All right. Just come in with a parting tool. Actually, we will come in with a spindle gouge real quick. And then we'll come in with our parting tool. Straight sides again. Just sight right down the bedway of the lathe. You get nice straight parallel sides. Again, the angle on the bottom edge is wanting to kick the tip that direction the deeper I go. So I counter that by just tipping it in, tilting it in a little bit, and getting that edge away from the arc of the circle. And that counteracts, but I have to pay attention or I start doing this, and I don't necessarily want to do that. So I just kind of tip it that way a little bit so that I'm just using this little corner to scrape. And that should help you keep your parallel sides. Now we want this jam to be fairly tight, and I will show you how to take it out once it's in there. And we finish the bottom. So right here, basically, I'm just using the top edge of my parting tool like a negative rake scraper. I'm just pulling it back against there to widen that very, very slightly. I think I need to make that a little bit deeper. That's my problem. Another thing on end grain that you can do is come in like that with the tip, rotate it, and you can actually just pull it straight out. And it'll cut unless you need to sharpen it. There we go. Now it's about time to sharpen that scraper again, or that parting tool again. There we go. Okay, so when you do a jam like this, it is always wise to bring up your tailstock until you absolutely cannot maintain tailstock support anymore. This piece is end grain. We can treat it as such, and cut it as such. Let me touch up my parting tool real quick. That's why I keep the diamond card there. I want to lift a tiny bit of a burr. There we go. That'll help with my peel cut here. We'll come above and a peeling cut. We'll widen it so that that tool doesn't get bound in there. All right, we're going to stop and we're going to double check, make sure that we're happy with our jam. That's a pretty decent jam. And at this point, discretion is the better part of valor. You can turn it all the way away, but I find it to be infinitely safer to have a little pull saw around. And just saw that little nib off. Make sure it ends up back in your bucket of cutoffs, because you can use that as a glue block 3 or 4 more times at least. Okay, maybe 1 or 2, but you can reuse it. So from here, finish your bottom however you finish the bottom. Jam is holding. We'll go with the Mark Soleil spindle gouge here. Aha. Good thing I'm wearing a face shield. And we lost it. Yay. Wouldn't be a demo if everything didn't go wrong.
That's right.
That was spinning backwards, so it came back toward the lathe. That was funny. So I got a little bit too aggressive. We'll lighten up that cut a little bit.
Sorry for you, JJ, but I'm not the only one.
No. if you don't have disasters like that happen, you're not turning enough.
I
Exactly.
agree.
Yeah.
You're not turning enough. So
Yeah.
less of a cut, lighter cut. So one thing when you use jams that you need to remember is ease up. You're not between centers anymore. You're not in the chuck. You're in a jam. There we go. All right. So again, however you like to finish the bottom of your pieces, that's all you. I do recommend that little corner gets softened. Just a tip. I always recommend you soften that bottom corner. Now, if you're unable to get your piece out of your jam, which obviously we can, so it's not necessarily an issue. This is an end grain. My jam chuck is end grain. So what I can do is take a peeling cut without cutting the piece all the way out. The thinner the walls are here, the less pressure. Remember I said that you want to turn your tenon, you want to keep the meat of the piece in there. You don't want to hollow before you turn your tenon because that bulk of that wood is going to support that tenon. This exact same concept, we're going to start peeling that away and removing bulk and watch what happens. So pretend we can't get this out. We're going to peel down close to it. We don't want to hit the jam, right? We don't want to mess up our tenon. We've spent lots of time making sure that tenon's perfect. But we want to turn down close to it. Just about to it. Come down just a little bit more. Now at this point, what we've done with the end grain is weakened it. So we should be able to just peel that out. And you can go down a lot thinner. It's not necessary because this jam wasn't as jammy as we thought it was. But you'll weaken this. So say you try and, I still can't get it, take it down a little bit more. Oh, I still can't get it, take it down a little bit more. Ultimately, it'll be thin enough that you can just peel it out and you'll crack the side of the wall and that'll pop right loose. So there is the procedure for a end match side grain box. And you still get that pretty cool spalting match here, match effect. It's not terribly off. And the cool thing is if somebody notices and if they ask about it, you can open the box and show them there's where it continues. You can see that's almost an exact mirror so that you can explain when you cut the tenon, you lost that much and that changed the pattern just enough that you can notice it. Any questions?
That's
Very
awesome.
good. All right, floor is open for questions. If anybody's got any, just be mindful of people who are talking and don't step over them while they're speaking.
Yes, sir.
JJ,
Yes, sir.
For most of my life, I've worked in the construction business, and I know a lot about matching. I know a lot about that. And yes, you made it really close. You made it really
yeah,
close.
this one it's not
Yes,
bad.
you did.
It's not bad.
Yes, you did.
I could have been a little, well, you know, the reason why, okay, so the reason why it's off as noticeably as pronounced as it is, if you remember when we started, this piece was not flat. It had a slight angle. So one end was thicker than the other. So when I took that down and flattened it, that changed the geography just enough to make the mismatch a little bit more pronounced.
Right. But I mean, that's really good. Really good. Believe me, you had my attention all night. Look at
Thank
that.
you very
Look
much,
at
Al. I
that.
appreciate it.
Look at that. There you go. That's match. That's pretty
Really
close to
nice.
match. That's pretty close to Matchbox.
It's not bad. It's close. And
It's pretty good.
the grain, the spalting pattern can make or break that too. This has got a real fine spalting pattern. That little section right there is a 32nd of an inch wide. That comes down to about a 16th of an inch wide. That's really, really fine. If that spalting pattern was a little bit wider, a little less intricate, it probably would fool your eyes a lot better. But it's still not bad.
No,
And
it's
what's
pretty
cool
good.
is you can explain to your customer, oh, well, it's actually the piece goes like this, and it's a continuous piece of wood. And there's where the magic really is. There's where you can see the spalt match up really, really well. And then you close it and it makes sense. It's logical why it works that way. So if you which is again why keeping a natural feature like that, or if you have something like this where there was pith, that helps because it lets you line up that grain as close as possible.
That is cool. Real cool.
Yeah, it's a great use of remnant with little 2-inch and 3-inch remnants of offcuts, and especially if anyone does flat work. It's
absolutely all these little again your bucket O cutoffs. Let's look at my bucket O cutoffs real quick, and I'll show you a couple of things that just haven't quite made it, but they're going to. There's some spalted maple. That's going to be a box. It's going to be a really small box. That's 1.5 inches across. But look at, I mean, just how expressive that is. It's end grain.
yeah.
But it's made a nice jam too. So once I can no longer jam with it, I'll make a box out of it. Conical jam for a vase with the tailstock up. That's a nice piece of walnut. That's going to end up being a lid. These are the kind of things that end up in my bucket O cutoffs. And then one day I look at my bucket O cutoffs and go, oh, there's some
nice
more
little box
spalted
in
maple.
itself.
Yeah, that would be a good lid for a several species box. Say, walnut body, spalted maple lid. I'm there. Or what is that? Oh, here's some hickory. There's some spalted hickory with frass in it. But that might turn into something. That I ended up using as a jam. It was sitting on a flat center on my life center and was holding probably a vase, just so that I had a little bit of support once I'd hollowed out the opening of the vase. So these little cutoffs, all these little things, these little treasures, what does Kim Tippin say? There's no such thing as scrap wood, only wood I haven't turned yet. And that's what your bucket of cutoffs. I can't tell you how many pieces that I've shown you guys came from that bucket of cutoffs. It's incredibly useful.
Well, you know what, JJ? Also, you explained a lot tonight because I have nothing but a French fit if I ever make a box. So,
okay.
I mean, I was like front and center all night. The whole night was so enjoyable. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
No,
and
thank
look,
you.
even with the chip there, and even with losing where I had that catch and lost, I still have a pop.
No, just to explain the way we want to make a fit. I mean, like
I said, Richard Finley mentioned that little tip of essentially making your tenon a bead offhandedly in one of his videos, and I started thinking about it and I started doing it, and I've been making boxes. I've got a big event next week. I've been making boxes for it that I'm laser engraving the lid, and I've turned out 10 boxes, all of them with a pop fit. And I can't tell you the last this is the first time in almost 10 years of turning that I've turned 10 boxes in a row, all having a friction fit. It almost, that just, before I learned that little trick, it didn't happen. It was every third box was loose. So I'd say if that increases my average by 1 or 2 boxes, you know, so I go from every third to every fifth, I'm doing good. 10 in a row with a pop fit. It's a game changer.
Yeah,
it's a game changer.
It's a game changer.
Just
believe me.
little things you do to make things work.
great demo, JJ.
Oh, it was such a great demo. Believe me, so enjoyable.
Thank you.
I had such an enjoyable night.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for JJ?
I've got one more thing
All right.
to say. Send in your artwork. Editor at worldwidewoodturners.org. We got a bigger, the upcoming newsletters is juicier, it's thicker. But the cool thing about being the editor of the newsletter is if 50 of you send in pictures, I can put in 50 pages because it's up to me. So I'm not going to make it smaller. So please send in your artwork.
Very good. All right, JJ, thank you very much. Once again, I appreciate it. Everybody else appreciates it.